All right, hello everybody. Happy April and welcome to another episode of the Assassin's Creed Book Club. Today we'll be discussing the first volume of the Assassin's Creed comics called Trial by Fire. But before we do that, just a quick note that the April book that we will be reading next is volume 2 of the same series. It's called Setting Sun. It's a collection of the next 5 issues, and it covers a totally different story arc in the historical aspect while still sticking with the same characters that we've seen in the modern day. So we did a giveaway as always for the book for April, so congratulations to the winners, of course. And if you didn't win a copy, feel free to use the affiliate link in the video description to pick up a copy, and of course the proceeds from that go towards future giveaways. So why don't we just dive right into this real quick. It's a pretty short story. All the comic volumes are pretty short compared to a lot of the books we read, so I'll try to keep this going pretty quickly. Things that I liked about the comics, to start off, I thought the art was really beautiful. It was really well drawn. It's very different coming to, like a graphic novel style of book. After reading a lot of text-based books, everything's a lot more I don't know, it's a little easier for me to immerse myself with all the images, and you can really kind of read facial expressions and see more action sequences more clearly defined. So I thought it was really beautifully illustrated. It holds up. I mean, I've always loved all the graphic novels in the past that they've done, like The Fall, The Chain, and Brahmin. And this one I think holds up really well compared to all of those. I've thought they've always had really good art style and inking and drawing. Another thing I liked the setting. I thought the modern day was done really well, but I also really like going to Salem, Massachusetts for the witch hunts and the trials. And I think what I like most about it is it's kind of a smaller scale than a lot of other things that we've covered in Assassin's Creed. A lot of times it's like full-scale wars, between countries or like revolutions, whereas this is kind of isolated to just this small town and like the things that happen within there. And I thought that was it was a little bit more of an intimate setting. I really liked that. I used to live in Boston, and I've actually been to Salem for Halloween one time, and so I have a feel for the area and kind of the history a little bit, and so it was really cool to see Tom Stoddard's story back there. I thought it was a really cool setting, although I thought it could have been utilized maybe a little bit more, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Finally, one thing that kind of stood out for me as far as the characters go is I really like Joseph, the character. Even though you only get to see him in the very last issue, the very last chapter, I should say, probably is how they kind of define it. He kind of left a really lasting impression on me. He kind of defies a lot of images that at least I had of him before you see him, because he's not this. He's a very like big, muscular, like almost Zangief type character that you really don't see a lot in the Assassin's Creed series. And the fact that he's kind of casually gay, and the fact that he's also kind of not aligned, like he was aligned with the Assassins, and then he was kind of aligned with the Templars, but it turns out he's kind of aligned with neither of them, and he seems to know a lot about Charlotte. I think did a really good job of making him interesting and a little hard to pin down with his characterization, like in a good way. And it really makes me want to learn more. So I thought his character was really done well in particular, although I liked pretty much most of the characters, even though some of them probably could have had a little more characterization. So while on that subject a little bit, why don't we move on to the dislikes that I had for the first volume. The first is, it's mostly a dislike just in the sense that I kind of wanted a little more out of the modern historical settings, and it's that this was a short story. Very short compared to a lot of the books we've been reading, and as a result, I think some of the characterizations suffered a little bit in terms of, some of the modern day characters like Cody and to some extent Xavier before he's killed off. You don't get to spend quite as much time, I think, with both the historical and the modern day cast to build up character development as you might usually get to in a game or in a standard book. That being said, I think they did a pretty good job. Like, you actually did kind of get a sense for most of the characters on a very base level, and hopefully they'll build that up over time. The other thing about having it be such a short story is also I thought the modern day, sorry, not the modern day, the historical setting of Salem, Massachusetts, I thought was really cool, but we don't get to see enough of it, in my opinion, because a lot of it is just spent underground, and it's kind of just, where the women are being held, and then kind of like out in the forest, and kind of like these areas that don't really hold as much sense of place as the opening does when you're kind of just dropped into Salem, Massachusetts. And so I thought it would have been more interesting to me to get a little bit more of a feel of kind of like the city life, the town life, more of the kind of lynchings that were going on. The first chapter ends with them lynching a woman that Tom Stoddard refuses to save. And I don't know, I kind of felt like I wanted more of that. I wanted just a little bit more on that front. Okay, moving on. Another thing that I wasn't super crazy about. All right, this one might be a little controversial because I know she's kind of a fan favorite, but I wasn't super crazy about the portrayal of Galena in this. And I know that a lot of people really like her. I enjoyed her in Syndicate, and I know a little bit about her from Initiates. I kind of felt like in the comics, she kind of doesn't come off with very many redeeming qualities, in my opinion. Like, she's kind of just angry and bitchy a lot, and like at one point she just kind of randomly sucker punches Xavier for like not that big of a reason. Like, I don't know, she just she seems almost one note in this, and there's no like levity, like like her moments with Sean and Syndicate, or I know she has kind of like a dark past. I think at one point she had to kill her sister or something in Initiates. There's no real hint of that, and even if like her behavior can kind of be explained by other media through Initiates or whatever, I'm always kind of a strong believer that when you have a standalone work of art like this, like a volume of a comics, like the characters need to stand on their own. They need to be strong characters on their own. And this kind of applies to a bunch of other things too. Like, some people are like, oh, Elise is a much better character if you read the novelization than she is in the game. And I'm like, well, but she needs to stand alone as like a strong character in the game. Like, you can't say, oh, but you have to read all these like 3 other like transmedia things in order to make this person a good character. Like, they need to just be a good character in any slice of those, you know what I mean? Same can be said a little bit, I think, for Connor as well, who really comes into his own on these optional homestead missions in AC3, but it's like you kind of need to make sure that the main thrust of the storyline handles him as a good character, and not just if you play the optional homestead missions. That's always been my philosophy behind these types of things, and I think it applies to Galena as well in this particular case. Like, if you take it just as how she's portrayed there, I'm not really a big fan of her, but I'm curious to see how that'll progress throughout the rest of the volumes. Third final thing that I disliked, and this is kind of a follow-on from Heresy actually, is Consus. And it's not that I don't like Consus himself, it's the fact that he keeps showing up randomly in ways that aren't explained. Like in Syndicate, it's like, oh, his consciousness was embedded in the prototype shroud, right? And it's like that. And so, when Grammatica and DaCosta would summon him, when they shoot Violet in the head, like, it makes sense. There's well-established rules for having human consciousness or Isu consciousness kind of embedded digitally in things, whether it's Clay in AC Revelations or Juno as she currently lives. And that fits in perfectly with this. But in both Heresy and in these, in what's her name, Dorothy from Trial by Fire, like, Constance just kind of randomly shows up and possesses people, and like the shroud is nowhere to be seen. There's no technology involved or anything. It's kind of just presented as almost like this mystical thing. And Assassin's Creed has always been a sci-fi series at its core, and it's never been a fantasy or a mystical series. There's always some scientific root to everything, and they don't explain it at all, and there doesn't appear to be any like particular reason why Constance would be able to just randomly possess people. And it makes no sense to me, and it's really starting to bother me because, like, this like as Walter would say in The Big Lebowski, Smokey, this isn't Nam, there are rules. Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules? Like, I mean, it's basic principles of world building, right? If it feels like there aren't any consistent rules to building the world, then the foundation starts to crack, and you kind of, at least in my case, like, I start to lose interest in the series, because if anything goes, it's kind of whatever to me. So it bothers me that it happened in Heresy and that it's happening again here in Trial by Fire. I'd really like to see them address it at some point. Anyway, that's going to be kind of the wrap-up. I still really like the comics volume overall. I'm really excited to be reading Setting Sun after that, and then Homecoming is the third volume we'll be reading after that, but that comes out in May, so we'll have to figure out something in between. And then we'll dig into the Templar comics, and then maybe if the Uprising comics are ready, we can go to those. Otherwise, we've got a whole bunch of other comics we can read in the meantime. All right, so with that said, let me know what you guys thought about Trial by Fire. Did you like the modern day cast and story? Did you like the historical setting and story? What did you like? What didn't you like? Are you excited to read more? And before we leave, we'll just really quick hop back to Last Descendants, Tomb of the Khan, which of course was last month's book. Not a whole lot of comments on this book from a lot of people. I hope you guys are still enjoying the series. So I'm going to focus just mainly on one highlight here from Hugh Pritchard, who has a bunch of points. But to start, he says, I really like Tomb of the Khan. He says, my personal highlight was She's story, in particular the chapter where she assassinated the Khan. I just thought it was a really good Assassin Creed character arc done in a few chapters, even though it lacked a little bit of closure. And it makes me realize I completely didn't talk about the historical aspect of that book at all in my review, and I totally agree with this. It was a nice, really quick, like almost video gamey assassination sequence that I really thought was well done. And overall, I liked the historical aspect of Tomb of the Khan. It didn't leave that much of an impression on me, as you can tell by the fact that I didn't really talk about it. Okay, so he goes on to say, I think it suffered from not having one historical story running through it. Like the first, it ended up being a little overstuffed with non-essential stuff. This was one of my big points from last time, so I obviously agree with this. I really did like Sean's story, however. Over the last few books and games, like Rogue and Heresy in particular, we have been trying to paint the Templars as not quite as evil as we thought. I think them using Sean and the Animus to make prosthetics for disabled people is the single most compelling argument for that yet. And I 100% agree with this, not much to add. Other than I think that's a great point. And then he closes with saying, I think seeing Rebecca Fine and Dandy eliminates any emotional weight from Syndicate's ending, and that it's really surprising they revealed her fate in this young adult book spin-off instead of a main game, but it's nice to see she's okay. Yeah, and while I did call out Rebecca as a highlight from the last book, I also do agree that it is a little weird to kind of cross mediums like that, like to open a question in the games and then answer that question in the book. And it kind of has echoes a little bit of Lucy's fate in AC Brotherhood, and then it's answered in Revelations DLC, which a lot of people didn't buy or play. And I'm kind of, again, of the mindset or the philosophy that any major questions that you propose to your audience should be answered in the same medium that they were proposed in. And that includes main games versus DLC as well. But in this case, it's a main game versus random young adult novel, second novel in a spin-off series. Like, you know what I mean? So I completely agree with this. I thought it was a bunch of great comments here. So thank you, Pritchard, for contributing to that discussion. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you all enjoyed digging into the comics. We've got a long ways to go. We'll be tackling them pretty much for the foreseeable future over the next few months. That's where all the excitement's happening as far as the modern day storyline goes. So I'll see you all on May 1st, where we'll be discussing Volume 2 of the Assassin Comics, Setting Sun. And I hope until then you all have a great April. So yeah, do you guys like the new apartment? I forgot to mention, hello, new apartment. We're mostly moved in. Might do a house tour video at some point once we get the upstairs set up. Downstairs is pretty set, bedroom's pretty set, but we have a second bedroom that we're turning into a craft slash fandom room. That might be where the flags end up going as well. Might do a house tour at some point and upload it to the channel, but I hope you guys enjoy the new background. It was a bit of a crazy month, but we made it through. Alright, anyway, thanks again guys. I'll see you on May 1st, and have a great month. Bye!